Just close that. Get that one. Yeah, I'm Mike Bullock. I'm from California, close to North San Diego County. I have a degree in electrical engineering, and then I worked at Lockheed Martin. I have a master's. I worked there for 36 years, and when I retired, my title was Senior Systems Satellite Engineer, Systems Engineer. So let me get this the way I want to present this. Let's see. Man, the light is not very good up here. I need assistance. Yes, thank you.
I didn't know there was a mouse up here.
Oh, that's not okay. Oh. That's all right. It's being shown properly.
That way you can.
Yeah, and I just advanced the arrows. Yeah, that's right. Okay, that's great. Yeah. So it's called, and I apologize for reading this thing. I just want to make sure I get things said that need to be said, and I don't want to say things that I don't need to say. So this is climate crisis leading to the requirements to reduce driving and reform car parking. And I'll describe the needed car parking system. It's a big deal, reducing driving. We're awfully car-centric. So the question comes up, why? And I'll only base that on the anthropogenic human-caused climate change. I'm not going to talk about danger or cost. I'm not talking, the noise or anything. I'm just going to talk about why, because the anthropogenic climate change, and how, and how much. Actually, how much, and how. Why, how much, and how. I'll get going here. These will be answered based on California's official plan to achieve its official 2030 climate mandates. Okay, so this is the world-famous healing curve. Some notes added. Atmospheric CO2 as a function of the year. And for these decades, it increased from 310 parts per million to around 380. And we know where the CO2 came from. For example, burning a gallon of gasoline results in about 20 pounds of CO2. A ton of coal burned, it's about 3 tons. So the red line there is the running average. And the yearly variation is because there are more deciduous trees in the northern hemisphere than in the southern hemisphere. Deciduous trees take CO2 out of the atmosphere in the spring when they leaf out, but that CO2 returns to the atmosphere when the leaves rot in the late fall and winter. About 20% of the emissions go into the oceans, and that's something that was learned from doing all this math and collecting this data. CO2 is a greenhouse gas because it has a resonant frequency matching the frequency of infrared. We call it heat, it's infrared. It therefore captures and redirects some of the infrared. So we certainly need greenhouse gas. Without it, we'd be nearly a frozen planet. Here, the temperature scale is on the left. The atmospheric CO2 scale is on the right. The plotted blue line is atmospheric CO2, and that's developed from ice core samples. The plotted red line is atmospheric temperature from a study of isotopes. And the data starts 800,000 years ago. That's a long time. Our species is about 300,000 years, or 300,000 years old, as far as we know. For the selected scales, the CO2 and the temperature are always reasonably close together. That's important to notice that. None of this is a problem. None of that we're looking at, there's no problem there. Except the spike at time 0 that extends to over 420 parts per million. That's a problem. The temperature is far from the top of that spike. In other words, that's a spot where the temperature and the atmospheric CO2 are far, far apart. It's kind of an ominous sign there. So now we're going to look at just 1,000 years. Because, I worked at Lockheed and we'd see data sometimes that was just crazy. And we'd say, I don't know if we should tell management about this because it's probably not good data. It's not good data because we don't understand it. And then we'd look at it, we'd either justify that or we'd find out that there is a reason it's there. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to look at 1% of that 0 to 100. We're going to look at just 1,000 years. This shows global average temperature, atmospheric temperature again, but now in this case it's in blue with the scale on the right side and CO2 in red on the scale on the left side. Clearly our industrial revolution is what caused that spike. The CO2 slope off to that right side, that outrageously high slope that's currently so large, must be brought to 0, and I'm going to say it now before it's too late, as I think will be shown. The other ominous thing is the temperature is going up, the blue. Now all that activity is perfectly normal. That's just what the temperature does, El Nino, La Nina, and solar activity. So this doesn't really prove anything, but it's kind of interesting. How bad could it get? Well, Governor Brown said to the Pope, in the presence of reporters, humanity must reverse course or face extinction. And of course the words reverse course doesn't help us much. That should have been adopt sufficient mitigation measures. Now, this is about all I really have on how bad it could get. This is from a reliable 2012 source, except it's been updated with red, and it says, such a large temperature rise, it occurred 252 million years ago and extinguished 97% of life on Earth. The current rise is of the same magnitude, but it's occurring about 10 times faster. So here's an indication that our situation may be getting dangerous. Ocean temperatures are plotted over a year and goes back to 1979 through 2023. And so, they've been going up. 2023 went up. But I don't know, I think it sort of speaks for itself. This goes back even further, and that's atmospheric temperature. And a lot of people in various parts of the world felt that a lot, for sure. So here's comments from the Secretary General of the UN. I'll just state that last one, we're dangerously close to the point of no return. That's what he says. So now I'm going to define some things. Climate destabilization and climate stabilization. Now, climate destabilization occurs when a process with a large warming potential that is also caused by warming proceeds at a rate that is large enough to perpetuate itself, perpetuate that warming, even if we stop our emissions. One such process would trigger other such processes. So there's several of these that have been identified. It's not happening, but it could. The outcome would be human habitat destruction, leading to high food prices, of course, mass starvation, and eventual extinction. An example would be if our permafrost starts melting at a high enough rate that it releases enough methane that the temperature of the atmosphere would keep rising, melting more permafrost, even if we stopped burning fossil fuels. Climate stabilization, that definition is pretty easy. It's simply avoiding destabilization. Now, So I'm saying human survival requires climate stabilization. Now, this is a 2011 letter to Sandag from California Attorney General Harris. And I'm paraphrasing that letter. California's greenhouse gas climate mandates represent the level scientists believe is necessary to stabilize climate. They are official policies of California designed to meet the environmental objective under CEQA, climate stabilization. Sandag, San Diego Association of Governments, wound up getting sued, cannot ignore them, and various court rulings did agree. The conclusion is that neither municipal governments nor metropolitan planning organizations like Sandag can legally ignore California's climate mandates and the official plan to achieve them. CEQA projects must include the official plan mitigation measures if applicable. So what are the mandates? Let's see here. Yeah, S305 is shown in red. So there's three values there. That one is just an extrapolation between the two there. Those mandates have been replaced now by SB 32 and AB 1279. By far, SB 32 is the most important. It reflects what is being attempted at the COP meetings. You know, COP 26, 27, 28, we read about those, and they're always talking about getting commitments for 2030. So now, why pick on cars? And answer is anytime you do a pie chart, the cars jump out, and they're the most. So that's why we pick on cars. So this is CARB's official plan, which was, it gets updated every 4 years. It is the California Air Resources Board's, CARB's, scoping plan. It's not a great name, but that's what it is, scoping plan. From page 4 of Appendix E, it says, zero-emission vehicles are not enough to solve the climate crisis. Part of the problem is 2030 is so soon. Contrary to popular belief, zero-emission vehicles are not enough to solve the climate crisis. It also depends on reducing per capita vehicle miles traveled. The scoping plan proposes reducing VMT from 24.6 miles to in 2019 to 18.4. Basically, just you can remember it's a 25% reduction. And the basis there is 2019, and that has to be done by 2030. From the scoping plan's Appendix E, pricing strategies include fees for miles driven, parking fees, that's what I want to focus on, parking fees, and dynamic fees on highway lanes. Authorizing pricing strategies is essential. So maybe we don't like it, but they say it's essential, and I'm sure it's because 2030 is so close. From actions, California employs over 200,000 people. It's a big state. End the state's subsidies for employee parking, and take additional actions to move away from subsidizing public spaces for car parking. Okay, so this is from Appendix D, local actions. It says from its Table 1, called priority actions. It's important, this is priority actions. It says for VMT reductions, implement parking, pricing, or transportation demand management strategies. Now, having observed CARB for over 10 years, I believe that they've finally done the math and they've come to the correct conclusions. Although the conversion to battery electric cars will be very fast, and although renewable electricity in California will probably be over 80% by 2030, down in San Diego where I am, we're well over 40, pushing into 50% territory. There will still be greenhouse gas from using electricity, and there will be internal combustion engine cars on the roads in 2030. The 25% reduction, driving reduction, CARB computes is reasonable. California is very car-centric. Pricing is required. If someone wants to shoot the messenger, like me or CARB or something like that, I guess you should shoot the climate scientists. That's where this problem comes from. It's those darn climate scientists. Regarding car parking policy, if we value human survival and understand the political difficulties of pricing, a good interpretation of the scoping plan is that it requests municipal governments to adopt an enforceable mitigation measure to procure well-managed car parking and to procure that from a third-party vendor for their workers in such a way that the parking system will spread to all places of employment. Everybody will want it. Apartment complexes, shopping centers, train stations, and so on, for both on-street and off-street. Well-managed must incorporate economic equity and social justice, and it must reduce driving. Car parking pricing strategy, managed parking, it provides earnings to those for whom it is built. That's really the key. Provides earnings to those for whom it's built. Now it is shared, it's value priced with congestion pricing, and it's automated. So the first system would be installed by a third-party vendor that is selected by an RFP, request for proposal process, for municipal government employees as a part of a government's climate action plan. It would be operated for the financial gain of the employees, such that the employees that drive every day would still break even. That would be important. That would require an add-in payment. For others, it would feel like getting paid to not drive. The vendor would be skilled at monetizing parking that is not being used by the employees, monetizing data. Think about the data that these third-party vendors would have. They know where everybody's going. You'd want to have some control over that, privacy considerations, so that the contract would be pretty complicated, but you would let them monetize that data because they would need the money, because you want to give a lot of money to the employees. They'd have to be skilled at building solar canopies. And there's a lot to that, as we heard our chair here talk about that. Operating charging stations, selling electricity, expanding the parking system into nearby streets and developments. So we want a very aggressive vendor who wants to kind of take over the world of parking, and a new Microsoft or whatever you want to call it. And it might be worthwhile to point out, Uber has grown. It's very, very large, and it's never made money. It's always lost. It's always lost money. It's worth billions. The people that own it are made a lot of money, and so that's kind of what needs to happen with parking. The private sector is the only thing that gives us any hope here. So we have to go fast. So dividend account parking. That's a name. A system designed to eliminate the harm. And what is the harm? Less take-home pay and no benefit from the parking for those that don't use the parking system. So the system we have now, is so-called free, is very suboptimal, needs to be replaced. So here's the top-level outcomes. Employees that drive every day break even, can't lose a penny. Employees that get paid not to drive, so they have to make more money. And the result has to be fewer employees drive, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The system is automated, and it's operated for the financial gain of the employees. Its earnings are revenue minus the operational cost, which would be contractually bound. The earnings go to employees in proportion to the amount of time they spend at the work location. The price is charged per minute. For each pay period, an individual employee's earnings amount is computed as the total parking earnings multiplied by the employee's time spent at work for the pay period, divided by the time that all employees, all added together, spent at work for the pay period. The employee's earnings, in other words, their dividend, if you want to call it dividend account parking, is therefore proportional to their time at the work site. For employees that continue to drive every day, there is an additional payment, I mentioned that before, add-in. It's computed so that these employees break even. So for an individual employee, the payment would be equal to their earnings minus their charge. They're not going to like that. They're charged. They're going to love the earnings. They're going to hate the charge, but they'll get the add-in, so they're going to break even. The add-in is zero unless it must be positive, and so that's how that would be computed. And in many cases, the add-in payment would be covered by non-employees using the parking and all the other different ways that the vendor knows how to make money. So here's the charge, earnings, and add-in for each employee. And who gets to use the parking? That's an important thing. It is fully shared. Anyone can use it, including drivers who are not employees. And they can use this system. Typically, the parked car is associated with an account by reading the license plate. However, a California car owner is in the California system and could be billed. So registering a car in the system with an account would need to be easy. So this is a real case where 3 actions are taken. This kind of proves that this will reduce driving. One of the actions is that the employee gets, the employer paid the employees to not drive. It shows that a significant decrease in the drive alone mode, that goes from 89% to 54%, can result in an enormous percent increase in the percent choosing an alternative mode. In this case, driving alone dropped 39%, but the bus and walk-bike modes increased by 1,600%, or by a factor of 17. The transit district would get more fare box return, and the bike riders would be safer because there's safety in numbers. The reduction in driving is caused by the new price differential, but it's also by improved bus service and better bike walk facilities. Therefore, this outstanding result cannot be attributed to the introduction of the cost alone. However, money does motivate people, so dividend account parking would incentivize people to not drive alone, just like paying people directly, which is called cash out. So that's what this is, cash out results. Group A cases have little or no public transit. Group B has fair public transit. Group C has good public transit. The largest reduction in driving, the largest increases or decreases in driving are 38% and 36%. The smallest decrease is 15%. And a 15% decrease in driving is an outstanding result. And it shows that CARB's assertion that pricing is needed is certainly reasonable. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope there will be some questions now or later. So yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. Lots of good engineering and numbers in here. Curious, the world's changed since a lot of those laws were put in there with COVID and work from home. Mm-hmm. How much has that alone changed the amount of people driving into work every day?
Well, it's coming back. It was absolutely dramatic. Let's think about what happened during that time. We kind of shut down our companies. I mean, it wasn't like we were working from home. We were just maybe not even working for it for a while. We just shut things down when COVID happened. And I think it's worth noting that the price of oil at that time did something that I never thought I'd see it in my life. It dropped to zero. It dropped to negative. People and that's, and later that turned around to bite us later. But yes, you make a valid point. We'll probably never go back, but that just means that maybe there's more parking at a lot of companies than they actually need, and yet they're going to say, look, we're all going to come in on Friday. Oh, now you need all that parking after all, because a lot of people are going to drive. I mean, we need to manage our parking in any case, but what you brought is kind of a little bit of unknown as to how much we're going to continue with working from home, at what percentage, and so on and so forth.
I'm just curious because you bragged about 15% being phenomenal in and by itself on this chart.
Yes, reduced driving.
There's at least 15% of the workers who are working from home now, so we've already achieved that level.
Yeah, and basically, CARB came out of this in December of 2022. Okay, so beginning of last year they came out with it, and maybe they could have, maybe they would have gotten a little different result there. So we'll see. It's going to come out in we got 3 more years. They'll come out, and they're probably thinking about it. That could help things, but there's a dark side to not coming into work every day. And here's what it is: people move out of the cities, they move out into the country, they move. Some of them figure out a way to live in a different state. I mean, a lot of distance away. Now, when they move out of the central cities, they're driving a lot more. Vehicle miles traveled is greatest when you have high density in your central urban area. You have Manhattan, where a parking space costs $1 million. I mean, people don't drive so much in Manhattan. But then if everybody that works in Manhattan is now working in upstate New York, they're up at Lake George, they're working in little towns because they some percentage of them do that. They may be driving a lot more, so we might have other problems from that. So that's good. Thank you.
Is Stephen Eves here at all? I think he's the 4th presenter.